Charles, you're right. I was dumb. You're good looking. I'm not. You're funny. I'm not as funny sometimes. You're absolutely right about the public library card. If I hope every town has, I'm sure every big town does, an incredible resource, completely free. So much stuff on there. Of course, I'm using it for comic books right now. They have music. They have, of course, novels. They have nonfiction.
Mhm.
It's an incredible resource that I'm afraid a lot of people like me either don't know about, dismiss, and don't take advantage of. Can't say enough about it.
And Charles. Talk comics. You ready to go? I'm going to start. Hi there, and
Do it
welcome
to
to.
it, like, sorry.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say do it to it, like Pruitt used to do it to it.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 3 of Hav and Charles Talk Comics. I'm Charles Herring, and I'm here with my good friend. Can I call you my good friend? I don't care. My good friend Javier Gonzalez. Hi, Jav. How you doing?
I'm good, Charles. How are you? And of course, you can absolutely call me your good friend. And of course, you don't have to ask permission to do that.
Well, that's good. We live in a consent is important world, so.
True. So when last we left us as your heroes of this podcast, we had just gotten done talking about some comic books, believe it or not.
That is correct.
And we had talked about Squadron Supreme and Black Hammer Volume 2.
That is correct as well. And we also had not yet had a podcast up on the internet or a podcasting site for anybody to listen to. But you know what has changed?
I do, but go ahead.
Well, what has changed is we are actually live with episode 1 at during the recording of this podcast. It came out last Friday. This is Thursday of the following week. And the next episode, the episode 2 that you were just mentioning, will be out the week after. I mean, it's really not, I'm not bothering with dates here because this one won't be out for 2 weeks after that one. Since we have decided, since we recorded the first 2 episodes, that we're going to publish, hopefully, once every 2 weeks.
Right, and that'll keep, I'm going to say us, but really me on a schedule where I'm actually trying to keep up. Once I sit down and read it, I pour through this stuff. It just sometimes it takes a little motivation of like, hey, we have a podcast coming up. I should probably read what Charles suggested to me and what I suggested to Charles. And I guess speaking of that, off the top, just so everybody knows, this is obviously about comic books, since it's called Hav and Charles Talk Comics. And the format is pretty darn easy. I suggest something for Charles to read. Charles suggests something for me to read. And then hijinks ensue when we discuss it on the podcast.
That's this podcast, right?
Yeah. I'm hoping you're not moonlighting on me on another podcast, just doing the same thing, except better.
I don't have enough time to do this podcast seemingly, so no, I don't have enough time to do another podcast.
Okay.
So this week, as we've mentioned more than once in the previous 2 podcasts, that evidently more than 2 people have listened to.
Oh, yeah?
Or at least the first.
I don't even know. Go ahead.
Well, you don't have access to any of that because I got it all set up. So you have no way of knowing anything about anything. But actually, a few people have listened to it. I'm rather excited about that. I'm pretty sure I know everybody that's listened to it, or between the 2 of us, we know everybody that's listened to it, but that's kind of cool. You can also follow us at our Twitter page at Hav, the &, Charles Talk Comics. Oh, I'm sorry. That's just what the title says. No, it's J&C Talk Comics. All written out. At J&C Talk Comics on Twitter.
Cool beans.
Yes.
And let me just endorse that. I follow that Twitter page.
As do I.
Or feed.
As do I. I follow that. Not only do I follow it, I tweet from it.
Yeah, you do. And
again,
sometimes some snarky tweets pointed at yours truly.
That's just marketing. It's what the kids like nowadays.
Yes. Of course, we're not on the gram, on the Instagram or anything. I don't even know what that is. Is that right? Is it Instagram?
Yeah, it's Instagram. Yeah, I just can't even with the Instagram yet, I guess.
I'm not sure how a podcast would translate to Instagram, since isn't that pretty much photo and image based?
It is, although I have been screenshotting a lot of stuff when I read it off my iPad, and I've even put some of those screenshots up from the first episode. Things that I didn't get a chance to bring up. I was planning on talking about them from that I think it was all from the, we talked about Black Hammer and Under Siege.
Squad?
Under Siege.
Oh, Under Siege is the very first
Oh, so you're pulling me off sides
Okay.
again. You just want me to call everything Suicide Squad.
Yeah. You do have a tendency, for some reason, Squadron Supreme to you was Suicide Squad in your mind.
That's right. That's right. So, to bring us back a little bit, this week we are talking about Justice League, the first, what did we decide? The first 7 episodes? There, I did it again. The first 7
Yes!
issues.
Yes! Uh-huh.
The first 7 issues of Justice League after the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yes. Yes. And also after Legends, another miniseries, I think right around the same time, right before Justice League, this iteration of Justice League launched in 87.
Okay. Okay, so this was 1987.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me just, hey, you said, were there things you wanted to touch on from some of the other stuff we talked about, especially if there's any links or comparisons to what we did between episode 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and now 3?
No.
Or do you want to just let it organically unfold?
But yeah, let's just dive right in to Justice League.
Okay.
Since I think we've been taking these things chronologically recently, so I thought we'd continue with that. And Justice League is definitely chronologically earlier than Stumptown.
Just by a bit.
I will point out
Just
something
by a
that
few.
I found fascinating when I was uploading the episode 1 notes. The 2 Under Siege Avengers came out, I believe it was in July of 1986, and Black Hammer came out in August of 2016. So almost exactly 30 years apart. And that really does encompass our reading areas there. Although we've both read comics for more than 30 years, but it was just a holy cow, we couldn't have picked 2 just bookend for the time period of reading.
Right. And well, in the mid 80s was really in my wheelhouse of when I was just knee deep in it.
Mm-hmm.
Very middle school era for
Yep.
me. So yeah, I thought that was very cool when you pointed that out. I did again, happenstance, cool coincidence, and very cool just to find out.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this Justice League arc that we read.
Sure. So Justice League, which by issue 7 is rebranded Justice League International, is, like you said just a second ago or a minute or two ago, coming off the heels of Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all the multiverse was for DC was smashed together, and you brought in a lot of heroes from a lot of different universes into one universe essentially. And I'm really giving very short cliff notes here on that. And then also the original Justice League of America title, which had run since the 60s, I believe, came to an end right before the relaunch of Justice League in 87. And that, very much in keeping with the times, had an incredibly dark and sad ending to the Justice League Detroit era of the Justice League of America, where you had at one point in time Aquaman, and then he left, and it was John Jones, Martian Manhunter, Elongated Man, and then they very much went with a B League, or even D-list, if you will, of other heroes on the Justice League, including Elongated Man, Steel, Gypsy, Vixen, and Vibe. And at the end of that last arc of the original Justice League of America title, the last, I think, 4 issues, I think it's 4, maybe 3, but 4 in that range, was called The End of the Justice League. And again, keeping with the times, dark because Steel and Vibe are killed by Dr. Ivo and his robots. And I think Vixen, Gypsy, and Elongated Man say, okay, I'm done with this. And you get a little taste of that in issue number 1 of Justice League at the very beginning, where John Jones is entering the headquarters, and they have them up on the screen, and he just clicks it off, and he looks very, down and somber, because it was just a rough go for your heroes. And then this book, like I said, this version of the Justice League very quickly establishes itself as not going to be dark. and quite the opposite. I always enjoyed it back then and still do to this day because it is, I still think, funny and refreshing to read. This group of heroes, including the Batman, sometimes making some jokes, and so that leads us up to the beginning of this new version of the Justice League. Fair?
Yes, sure. I didn't really know any of that because I have only ever dabbled a little bit in reading any Justice League's graphic novels I might on occasion pick up at the library. It's not really been my ballywick. I'm not a big, as I've said before, I'm not a big group comic, group superhero fan. So that's, of course, all you're making me read.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. And now, you know what? I'm not doing that on purpose. You know what I'm doing? I'm suggesting stuff for you to read that I kind of just really wanted to go back and reread myself.
No, I think you're doing fine. That was not a complaint. I'm having fun laughing to myself about this. It's just kind of reinforcing this with me. I like to take I want a deeper dive into an individual character. I really want to know why Guy Gardner had that stupid fucking haircut.
Maybe he just doesn't have a good barber.
I actually think based on his personality, he pissed off his barber.
That would be completely believable. Because I don't know if people listening are into Guy Gardner, one of the many Green Lanterns that for some reason Earth has, he's just not very nice. He's an asshole.
I'm pretty sure Earth has so many Green Lanterns because it's such a fucking shit show.
Yeah, there's always something going on where maybe more than one GL is necessary to handle up on it.
I mean, it's that whole Marvel thing where everybody in the known universe in the Marvel comics thinks Earth is just, I mean, everything bad starts from Earth.
Yeah.
This backward blue planet that just is a travesty. So it's probably the same way in DC. And
just to go back just a sec, when you're talking about, and maybe we talked about this in one of the last podcasts. You know, you said before many times to me when we were just talking about comic books that you were very much more into the, one hero, Spider-Man's your guy. Mm-hmm. I always gravitated towards the team books because I just liked reading about bunches of different characters, and it just was fun and cool, whether it was X-Men, Justice League, Avengers, New Mutants, even Alpha Flight, I've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. It was always fascinating. Now, that said, you're absolutely right. There are players and characters where you just get a taste and you don't really get to know them very well just because there's not really room for it, or they're not there very long sometimes.
Yeah, and they also are afraid, especially if they have their own books, the writer's afraid to do something inside this book with that character and advance the character in any way, so they leave a lot of them out. So they don't really have arcs within the team book.
Very true. Go ahead.
Well, I was just watching, I think it was on Screen Crush, Ryan Aries' breakdown of Wanda and the Vision. I think he was the one that was talking about in an Avengers book, and it could have been somebody else because I watch lots of silly YouTube videos about comic books because, I mean, I'm doing a comic book podcast, so duh. But talking about throughout the history of the Avengers, the Scarlet Witch and Vision really had a chance to blossom throughout the Avengers because they weren't in an individual book. So that was where they could do things with them. That's why there's this backstory of the two of them in the Avengers. Whereas Captain America had his own book, other characters that are Avengers, I don't know what time
Iron
who was
Man,
who.
Thor.
Yeah, they all have their own books. Their main role happened in their other books. And it seems like a lot of the time it's just a different character in a team book than it is in their own book. I mean, when you read Wolverine on the team, and then you read when he's in his own book, he's almost two different characters.
Well, and nowadays, which team book are you talking about? Because isn't he on every Avenger or Marvel team there is now?
Well, yeah, he has been over the last few years on pretty much every team in every iteration of Wolverine. I guess I shouldn't have used Wolverine. But you get what I'm saying. I can use Superman in Justice League because Superman doesn't ever, when he's in the Justice League, to me, seem like Superman.
Well, yeah, he's just very much what idealized. You're not going to get a lot of his drama with Lois or deep dives on his home life, or
or
it's just
or
him being,
or his kindness and sense of humor.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
with Batman, they just go into uber dick with him.
yeah, yeah, because that's, well, and because he's good at it, I feel like, or maybe this, I like these writers too. Let me point that out real fast. So Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatis are the plotter and writer. I think Keith Giffen may have done even layouts and plotting. J.M. DeMatis, I believe is how you say it, was actually did the script or the writing, and then Kevin Maguire did the pencils. And I am blanking on who did the inks on it. And even the lettering I liked in this book. I like this book a lot. I'm just, I this comic book. I
It
think
had a
I've
lot of
mentioned
fun
it more
stuff
than a
in it.
couple of times.
I will say it had a lot of fun stuff in it. I see why you enjoy it. I
Now,
will
real fast before, oh, go ahead.
I will do my best not to bring down your joy of the book.
So you're trying to say you hated it?
No, I don't. I don't hate it. I will be perfectly blunt with you. I read this right after you suggested it to me, so at least a month ago. And I meant to reread
Okay,
it today, but I didn't get to it.
that's okay. There's I mean, it's pretty straightforward,
Hmm.
and I got my notes. But
Okay.
before we get too far into it, I just wanted to point out you made a good point about the team book when they're using characters that have their own ongoing series. In fact, to jump back to the end of the Justice League original series, the reason why that version of Justice League Detroit came about was because it's my understanding, and I don't remember the articles I read this on or where I saw this, that towards the end of that run of Justice League of America, editorial at DC said no DC characters with ongoing series can be in the Justice League. And I think Aquaman didn't have an ongoing series at the time.
Uh huh.
And of course, John Jones didn't, Elongated Man. And that's why you had a bunch of really, at the time and some to this day, between Steel, Gypsy, Vixen, Vibe, characters that just weren't, not even household names for comic book readers back then. And
I didn't know
some of
who
them
Vibe
done
was until he appeared on the Flash television show.
well. And that version is a lot better. The one in Justice League Detroit, the end of the original Justice League of America, he's a Puerto Rican descent. I don't remember if he's Puerto Rican or Puerto Rican descent, and all the stereotypes and cliches that could possibly go along with that in the mid to late '80s are just thrown out there and just kind of cringy
Oh,
on
really?
a lot of levels. Yeah, he's kind of a thug, and they try to do an accent on him. I think I don't remember that well about it. I just remember just thinking, oh hey, well I remember thinking, oh cool, look, Hispanic Latino character. Oh wait, oh no, what? Oh right, and then they killed him. So there was that. So just so you know, I think maybe a good idea in theory, but then you have a Justice League where the biggest name is John Jones, the Martian Manhunter,
Yeah.
who we've made points in the past. The Black Hammer series, he was very much an analog for or a basis for Barbalian, which
Hmm.
is to try to link these together. And then the other thing I just wrote down while you were mentioning team books, that was what was cool about Uncanny X-Men back in the 80s, I think, is because until Wolverine got his own series, I believe in 88 or for sure late 80s,
Hmm.
none of those characters had their own books. So Chris Claremont was allowed to just do pretty much within reason, of course. I'm sure they wouldn't let him do everything maybe he wanted, but those characters had these long arcs of, romance. It was very, very soap opera-y.
Yeah.
And Scott and Jean Grey, Scott and Madeline Pryor, and well, that's for another day. But that you made me think of that X-Men was unique
Hmm.
back in that day because not everybody had their own book, especially Wolverine.
Well,
Even though he
it's
was
kind of a
probably one of their most popular characters.
well, other than the Avengers, a lot of the original team book for Marvel, they didn't have their own characters because it was the Fantastic Four. They came up with a team book,
Right.
but it was just the team,
Yeah,
and it was a family.
it was. Yeah, it was. So yeah, so this starts out, and you get to see Guy Gardner in all his glory, being just a bad person and sexist and rude and demeaning, and then you get to see him butt heads with Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And, spoilers, if you haven't read this since it's only been out since 87, there is, in my mind, for me, one of the most iconic scenes in comic book history when that finally comes to a head. And I don't know, did you enjoy that part of it?
I did it. I did enjoy that. I told you at the time I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed
Yeah.
the whole comic. It didn't strike me as I don't know, a seminal work. It was entertaining. I liked some of the things in it quite a bit. Some other things are very dated, and I
No,
always
that's
like
good.
seeing.
Well, hey, and again,
I always like seeing Captain Marvel.
me too. Me too.
I don't know why I like that. And you notice I don't know if you picked this up. I refuse to call him Shazam,
He's Captain Marvel.
and he was
Yeah.
back then. That was his name. Just because they couldn't use Captain Marvel on the title page of the comic because they lost the rights to it. Well, they never had the rights to it. Possibly. I should make you research that. You're an attorney.
That is I've tried to go through that. That was such bull. Fawcett Comics and the people that worked at Fawcett Comics came up with Captain Marvel back in the Golden Age. The little I know about it, DC, Captain Marvel came out shortly after Superman Action Comics #1 came out.
Yeah, it was a dead
litigation
ripoff of
ensued.
Superman.
Well, not really. I mean, yeah, superpowered fly, but different,
Okay.
different. Or I mean, you got a kid saying a word to become a superhero. That's pretty different than Superman, I think.
That is.
But
I mean, what kid shouldn't follow a stranger into a subway to get magic powers?
right, or wherever. I don't know the origin story from the early 1940s, but yeah,
It was
I think
effectively
that's
that.
pretty
I
accurate.
don't know if I don't think it was exactly that, but yeah, just
Hey, what bad could happen with a 10-year-old kid wandering off with a stranger in the big city?
it was a simpler time.
Well, and I do know, litigation ensued, and Fawcett Comics ultimately lost. Or DC just bought him out, and then they just buried Captain Marvel forever, to the point where my understanding is if you don't use a trade name like Captain Marvel for a certain amount of time, it goes into the public domain. And somebody at Marvel was keeping track of the clock, because as soon as it was public domain, boom, Marvel's version of Captain Marvel comes out. And I'm sure there were some upset people at DC wondering, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Why didn't we all they had to do was publish a comic book every few years to keep it.
Well, and you
so-
would think that
and
they
I-
would have been smart enough to do that, considering the fact that that's why Wonder Woman has never not been published. Because when they bought it from
okay.
the writer, there is something in the contract that said that if it's ever not published, the rights could revert back to the author. Not that they would, but that they could.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I learned that from another comics podcast, I think. I can't
Cool.
remember which
Well-
one, and now I feel bad because if I'm going to... I should be able to cite my sources.
I got you. Well, you'll think of it, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, and going on that thread of other properties, so Captain Marvel, Fawcett Comics originally, and Blue Beetle, originally a Charlton comic book character from the Silver Age, that and maybe even go back to the Golden Age. Actually, there was a version in the Golden Age, and then Ted Kord was a Silver Age version in Charlton comic books. They eventually got bought out
And who created
by
it?
DC. That would be the great Steve Ditko, I believe.
That is
I
correct.
believe. I might be making that up. Is that
No,
right?
you're not.
I'm not right. Who made it? Who created?
No, you're
Beetle?
not making that up. You are correct. Steve Ditko.
Oh, okay. Well, and I know he did the version of Ted Kord, I believe, because he also came up with the Question, which those two characters and some others from Charlton were the basis for the characters that we see in The Watchmen.
Exactly.
Blue Beetle, was the basis for Night Owl. The Question was the basis for Rorschach. Captain Adam that we meet in the very last pretty much panel of this arc was the basis for Dr. Manhattan, and there's a few others whose I'm not going to try to remember. But I thought that was a cool aspect of it too.
That was a cool aspect.
That you're post-crisis, you're getting to see these different characters from different companies at one point in time, different universes all together. Going to what you said, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Again, this was something I read when it came out in the 80s, so it does have a special place for me, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Especially also because back then there was a lot of dark and gritty, and this was absolutely not. This was almost a laugh-a-panel for sure, trying to crack-wise feel like once per page. You have Batman cracking jokes, and
Well, what,
a couple times.
3?
Yeah.
I think he cracked 3 jokes.
But that's Batman doing it. That's you don't see bats being the trying to, not even trying, because let's face it, if Batman wanted to be funny, he'd be the funniest person in the world.
I disagree.
All right. Well, agree to disagree.
Well.
So it was, compared to stuff that was coming out back then. You got Dark Knight, you had Watchmen coming out, you had Squadron Supreme that we just talked about. This was a nice, to me, change of pace to be more lighthearted, although there was some kind of creepy stuff going on too. Creepy and serious stuff. You get the whole
Dr. Fate.
Dr. Fate is creepy as all get out.
Yes.
And Lords of Order and the Gray Man.
Yeah, the Gray Man was really, I'm not big on the creepy stuff, but I kind of liked that whole arc of the Gray Man and him taking what he was getting for punishment, and they're all like, no, we thought you were the guy for this. This wasn't a punishment to trap you in here and have everything be gray the entire life. That's not punishment.
And strand you on an island, but you can have other cells, but you have to be isolated and you can't interact with anybody. So, hey, what are you talking about? It's like a trip to Chuck E. Cheese. Dr. Fate has always been creepy. I've always liked the creepy DC folks, even though I haven't read a bunch, like the Spectre, the Question. Now they're in DC, the Phantom Stranger. Mm-hmm. But it's all creepy, and I always wish there would be some big, and maybe there has been, I just don't know about, some big mega event. Although they do those too often now, probably for everybody's pleasure, or more than we would like. Some big event where you had all the big supernatural DC guys and girls, Zatanna. I don't know. I know there's others. I'm blanking. Get together for some big event. Anyways, that's a little bunny trail I just went down.
Well, don't they have a Justice League Dark or something like that?
That's right. They absolutely did. They did that recently, and there was Shadow Pact that came out in the 2000s, I think, with some other supernatural types, not really the big ones like Constantine or Spectre or Phantom Stranger, but I know I remember liking Shadow Pact. God, I'm going down bunny trails now. I'm sorry, Charles.
That's
because
okay. Chase the bunny.
Detective Chimp was in that series, and that was my first introduction to Detective Chimp.
Oh Lord, are we back to Detective Chimp?
Oh my God, we are, because that is just prime time for me.
I guess Detective Chimp is better than, I don't know, you riffing for like 30 minutes on Cyclops.
Let's just say I would take Detective Chimp over Howard the Duck any day of the week.
Okay. Having not really read either one of those, I'm not going to really argue with you.
I was going to say, I don't think I've read hardly any Howard. I've read him like in those little like 2-page things they'd have sometimes in comic books I'd read. So I can't say anything about it. Hey, and the other thing I wanted to point out, I know it's been a bit since you read it. In issue 2, you saw these, speaking of different universes, and let me try to, compare and contrast. We talked about Squadron Supreme and them being from a different universe. In the second issue, you have these heroes from a planet that died that are now on the DC Earth, right?
Yeah.
And
they were truly good guys.
Yeah, they wanted to, because their planet fell victim to nuclear destruction, essentially. Fallout, and eventually they left their planet using the magic of Silver Sorceress, and then you had one, Gina, is how I'm going to say it, and Blue Jay, these 3 hero survivors of a dead planet, coming here and deciding, you know what, we're going to not let you all do to your planet what happened to our planet. We're going to disarm the whole planet, which to me just smacks of Squadron Supreme at some level, although, obviously Squadron was doing it on their own planet. They didn't come over to the Marvel Universe 616 to do it. But I thought that was interesting.
And in fairness, all they were trying to do was get rid of nuclear weapons. They weren't trying to control everyone on the Earth.
True. They weren't going Super Squad Supreme mind wiping, knowing people and changing their personality. They're just like, look, nuclear weapons are bad.
So you can't
you
have
guys
them.
are dumb.
But we're going to take the gun away from the toddler. I mean, it makes sense.
Did you read at all about that, or did you pick up that those were supposed to be analogs for Marvel characters?
No. Enlighten
Silver
me.
Sorceress.
Okay.
We already spoke about her from WandaVision, the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. Okay.
Wandjina. I don't know if you noticed a couple times. He was carrying a battle axe kind of hammer thing, and could summon the winds and the weather and the thunder and the lightning. It's supposed
Oh
to be
my
a
gosh,
Thor
she's
analog.
even Oh my gosh.
She's even what?
She's even posing like one. I got a screenshot of this when they're attacking the Bialya missile silo area. And she's posing like the Scarlet Witch. And the other guy is introducing himself, and his name is Wandjina. So right next to...
Yeah, I'm saying Wandjina.
Well, but what I'm saying is, while he's saying that it's right next to her, she says, I am the Silver Sorceress, and he goes, I am Wandjina, which is a lot like Wanda. So they weren't even...
Yeah, that's true.
Now that you bring it up, there's no subtlety there.
In Blue Jay...
And I missed it.
I remember reading about this years after I read that arc, thinking, oh, wow, duh. Because it wasn't as overt as Squadron Supreme in Marvel, right?
Right.
Where it was Nighthawk was Batman and Hyperion was Superman. Blue Jay was a little tougher. The only thing I've read about that is that maybe it was supposed to be like a Yellow Jacket type character. And they also talked about in their universe, the fastest man on 2 feet died, and I forget what his name was, and he was supposed to be, of course,
Quicksilver.
Oh my God.
Quicksilver.
Thank you, Quicksilver. I was blanking on Quicksilver's name. So yeah. So I thought that was cool.
No, that is very cool.
That Batman Kraken Wise. We said it. We really didn't say it. The one punch where Batman punches out Guy Gardner with one punch, and is now I feel iconic at some level. And Blue Beetle just losing his mind about it and laughing, and Black Canary being upset she missed it. And then right after that, yeah, she's very upset that she missed that. And then right after that, he's still the same after he comes to, because somebody says, oh, should we check on Guy Gardner? And Batman says, no, he's going to be out for hours. And sure enough, he is, because apparently Batman can't knows how to punch.
Which as we know now, science-wise, that's really, really bad.
He probably had a pretty bad concussion from that.
I mean, if you lose consciousness more than about a few seconds...
Right. That's true. And plus, I'm not thinking he landed very softly. Like, first the punch to the head from the fist of Batman, and then I'm sure his head didn't just lightly land on the ground.
Well, Guy Gardner's not the kind of guy you reach out to catch as he slams into the ground. You're like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
Here's your ring back.
Yeah, like nowadays you'd be like, oh, I wish I was rolling my camera on that, my camera phone on that.
Yeah.
I missed it. And then he wakes up a little later, and he's still himself, his same sour, rude self, and then he's going to find his ring, which he took off to face Batman, which, bad idea, Gene's right there. Mm-hmm. He probably should have kept the ring on. And he goes under a console at the monitor in the headquarters, and a mouse scares him. He bumps his head, and then when he wakes up, he is all of a sudden more sweet and nice than Captain Marvel, which you get to see more and more as the issues progress, even after this arc.
Yeah, and since I didn't continue reading, what the heck's up with that?
Yeah, he's like that for a while, and then guess what? He's not going to stay like that forever. Uh-huh. He goes back eventually.
Oh, okay.
But
so it was just they were having fun
to a degree. Yeah. Okay. I think so. They were just turning it on his head. Him always being such a I don't know. I don't know if your nephew is going to listen to this, but pardon my French. It's for him being such a dick. I know we've already cursed a couple times.
Dude, I've cursed much worse than that. Don't worry about it. And yes, my nephew probably will. Okay. But he's 15. I'm sure he's heard those words before.
Gotcha. Fair. So, and it's been a while. You know what? Again, selfishly, I wanted to reread this. I know there's, Justice League International brings in a lot of international characters, including Fire and Ice, to female characters, and Guy Gardner falls hard for Ice later on in the series. Eventually, he comes back to his old self, but he still keeps some parts of it being nice because he likes her and tries to be better. I don't know. I kind of remember that from back then.
I mean,
So
that happens to all of us.
there's
We meet a
that.
woman we like and we try to be a better person.
Right. No, I know I try to be because of Julie. So what else? Blue Beetle, and then eventually we meet the Laurel to his Hardy, or the Abbott to his Costello, or vice versa, Booster Gold, because eventually they become just a comic relief, a comedy duo in the pages of Justice League and Justice League International.
I really enjoyed Booster
And
Gold, and those are words I never thought I'd say.
ha, in a fairly new creation for DC at the time, he had his own ongoing series, I think, at one point in time back then. I don't know how long it lasted, but yeah, Booster was cool, right? He was fun.
He was fun, but I liked how his audition was having to fight everybody while Batman's like, no, let's see what he can do.
Yeah, hang back. Let's see what old Gold here can do.
It's like,
And then finally, when things got serious, Batman was like, "Okay, time to go."
okay, I guess we can't let him die.
There's yeah, probably bad if on his first day he's dead. Well, and he's also brought into the league by one Maxwell Lord, who just recently had his big screen debut, albeit in my opinion, just kind of a weird version of him in Wonder Woman 84.
No, see, I haven't seen that yet.
Check it out. It was okay. It wasn't as good as the first one. I didn't, in my
Well,
opinion.
that's I read reviews and it saddened me because I was really looking forward to it because I thought
too.
they actually had finally
I was
made
too.
a good DC movie when they made Wonder Woman, and
Yeah, it was. I've only watched it once, but it was just a, why they went from where they were at with the first one to 84 and to that story. I don't know. They could. I just feel like they. I don't know if they were trying to do too much, but that's a whole different thing. Wonder Woman 84. But I can tell you, Maxwell Lord was interesting to me even back then and now because he was obviously working something behind the scenes with something else going on in those weird little shots where you had the computer doing its thing and calculating odds and changing the playing field. And
yeah,
that gets fleshed out as we get deeper into the series. There's a lot of, I don't know that they're Easter eggs. There are a lot of seeds they're planting in these early issues that pay off, I think, pretty well later on in the series,
I
especially when this same creative team is still on it.
I'm gonna have to. I'm glad you mentioned that the whole international was on Hoopla because I'm gonna have to get that and read because I am interested in what was going on with Maxwell Lord. They did a really good
It
job on
gets,
that. I was kind of irritated that we didn't get more into it before I stopped reading. Not that I couldn't have kept
no, I mean,
reading,
you're
but
7 issues in. Hey, they very definitely slow burned that.
oh yeah,
And from what I recall, that was an ongoing thing. You also got a little taste of Doctor Fate. He leaves pretty soon. I was going to say Mr. Miracle, which I another character I didn't know much about. I didn't know back when I read this in the 80s that was a Jack Kirby creation of the New Gods. And you also briefly get to meet, albeit through some split scenes with Big Barda and him on the phone having to explain while he was on monitor duty for another 24 hours and her not being happy. And there is a funny moment where Batman says, "Hey, Scott," his name's Scott Free, you're Mr. Miracle, you're on monitor duty when we get back." He's like, "What do you mean? I got to get home. My wife will be upset." And he's like, "You have a wife?" And this kind of, your wife. And he says, "My wife could kill the Joker with one hand." Because she's Big Barda and she's like, as far as I know, like Wonder Woman level, maybe powerful, or close anyway,
yeah.
from what I understand. So you get to meet her, and I think we pretty much Black Canary's there.
I was very disappointed with the way Black Canary was portrayed because I love Black Canary and I did not care for it. There, I said it.
Well, because they were, all the guys are cracking wise, and she's pushing back. But there's a lot of, speaking of the time period, those kind of jokes wouldn't go over very well
Well,
nowadays.
that wasn't even it. I just they are doing this thing that a lot of men do. Well, she's feminist, therefore she's a dick too.
Ah,
I'm like, my only negative I really had on this comedy, and it's across team books, especially from the 80s, which is when I didn't really want to read team books. everybody had to be a dick all the time. Even the, quote, comic relief guys. I mean, except for Captain Marvel. And then he's not a dick because he's, what, at this point, probably 14 years old?
Right, something like that.
13, 12, something like that. He's a kid in there. So.
And John Jones. Martian Manhunter is always
Martian
nice.
Manhunter is great, too. I actually like Martian Manhunter. Not as much as Barbalian, but...
No, I can see that. This is when I really fell in love with Martian Manhunter as a character, and he had back in this era, he had his own miniseries with the same writers and plotter, Giffen and DeMatis, and there were a lot of miniseries spin-offs. Dr. Fate had his own one, and so did Mr. Miracle by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatis.
I think I'd enjoy reading some deeper cuts with some of these characters by these writers.
I think you would. And they're interesting, and they're different, and they're not all. I mean, the Mr. Miracle one definitely gets into his home life with Big Barda, and they're kind of living in suburbia, and that's kind of fun.
And that's what I'm all about, is the home life of superheroes.
Right. Well, that's why you wanted WandaVision to just stay in those first few episodes and not change.
Hey,
right?
It's part of the reason why I'm the next comic you're reading is the Hawkeye arc.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I'm legitimately not kidding. I do like knowing about the reality of the life of someone that would put on tights and go fight crime.
Well, and you mean more of like, instead of like the gritty, what if superheroes were real thing, more of like, hey, so what happens when it's, his mom's birthday and he's forgot to get her a gift? Or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I think I am against a superhero that could just end the universe ending guy choosing not to go save a world because he had to go to his daughter's birthday party. I think that was bad.
In hindsight, and of course you're referencing what happened in Black Hammer. Yeah. Hindsight.
Just take 10 minutes, come over here, hit the damn guy with a hammer and go home.
So that, really, really bad stuff doesn't eventually happen, including you dying eventually, by the way. But no, your little girl's sixth birthday party or whatever it was, totally worth it in hindsight. No, bad idea. I don't know if there's anything else. So eventually Maxwell Lord is behind the scenes, and I'm giving away a lot of the plot, but just, if you haven't read it, that's on you. It's from the 80s. He's behind the scenes. And as opposed, and I'm not doing that on purpose, but I did think of Squadron Supreme when I was reading this recently. Instead of the team themselves imposing their will on the world, you got Maxwell Lord manipulating things behind the scenes so that the UN says, "Hey, Justice League, now you're Justice League International. You still can do whatever you want, but you have the authority based on the United Nations to have embassies all over the world. And good luck." So I thought that was interesting too. And the next few issues they're setting up embassies and recruiting new members.
I would like to know since I don't know, I would like to know what the heck went on with Guy Gardner and the Russians prior to the episode when they were in Russian airspace.
Or issue, but sure, episode 2 works.
Boy, again.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I can't stop.
You can't.
I literally can't. I have issues with episodes. Or episodes with issues?
Or something with both of them, yeah. Do you call TV episodes issues, maybe? Is it like something that you flipped in your head?
No, evidently I'm just using episodes for everything.
Okay. I don't know that much about it. It just, the little I know is from this and a couple other things I read way back when. Apparently he had a bad run-in with him. And also, something they mentioned in this arc is that Kilowog, Green Lantern extraordinaire, helped created the Rocket Red Russian Soviet Union Iron Man type suits. They mentioned that, and I think it's part of some arc from Green Lantern or Green Lantern Corps back in the day. But I didn't read much, if any, of Green Lantern back then. That's the very little I know about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to
point
out.
And me, Ryan Reynolds is the only Green Lantern I recognize.
Right. And that is your go-to DC movie.
Yeah. Oh, the movie that almost ruined comic book movies.
What else?
And actually did ruin DC comic movies because they said, hey, well, if that we tried to be funny with that one, so Zack Snyder, have your way with us.
Yeah, now you can just go super dark on Superman because, Superman's nothing but dark and gritty and not hopeful and aspiring. No. Let's shoot it all in like a gray filter
Yeah.
and put some Chris Cornell music over it. One other character, I'm sorry, I did have this note. We get introduced he's not a new character just for this arc. The Creeper. Speaking of another Steve Ditko creation.
Wait, was that the
Creeper,
guy
Jack
that shows
Ryder.
up in the town that was having the problem with the gray stuff?
Yep. That's
Oh
the
my
Creeper.
gosh, I actually really liked that character.
Great character, great version. I haven't read a bunch of it, but I definitely wanted more of that and him just busting Batman's balls.
That was an enjoyable. That he had a little Joker Batman dynamic going without the fear that he was going to try to massacre 100 people.
Right. Yeah, you definitely get the idea that he's not quite right, but not with the homicidal tendencies maybe
Yeah.
of the Joker.
But in fairness, Batman's not quite right.
Yeah, seeing your parents murdered in front of you in an alley maybe does something to you, like makes you want to dress up like a bat and fight crime. I don't know.
I'm not saying he hadn't been through
think-
trauma. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and then the Joker killing his second Robin probably didn't help things. Again, in the 80s, when everything was dark and gritty. So yeah, I wanted to point that out because I did like that appearance because you had Jack Ryder appearing I think in earlier issues, and then finally you find out, oh, Jack Ryder's the Creeper. Okay, here we go.
Oh,
And yeah, so yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did.
I think it's one of those where time and place. When it came out for me, I got it off the comic book rack at a grocery store or at a B. Dalton, and then was just in from issue 1 until I was like in high school.
all right.
So it was just a time and place thing. So yeah,
Well, I have to tell you about my favorite part of this,
please.
and it has one of my favorite DC characters, Superman, in it, and he's at the White House, and he's talking to the
Yes.
president, who is clearly Ronald Reagan,
Right.
and it opens with, "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. We've met before, Mr. President. We have? Yes, sir, several times."
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's some serious shade, because, come on.
Right. And by the way, Reagan back then, pretty popular president.
Uh-huh.
Won both of his elections by like landslides. So they're
Well, it goes on, because he says, "You'll have to excuse me. I've been under quite a bit of pressure lately." And understood, sir. So they go on a little bit, and they talked about the proposal, and then he starts to. I didn't get the whole page, but the last bubble I've got is Reagan going, "I've got to talk to Nancy about the proposal."
Right, he's got to go
that
check with Nancy.
Superman, yeah,
He's got to think about it.
and he has to talk to Nancy, who I
Well,
don't
and-
know when this issue came out, but I do wonder if it's after everyone found out that she was consulting with an astrologer.
No, I don't think it was. You know what? I don't think it was. I think this came out before that was public knowledge or common knowledge.
Okay.
But I think it was known that he would talk to Nancy about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And he would make mention of that back then. But I thought the same thing when I read this just recently. Like, ooh, it would have just been too perfect if they would have mentioned that. But I don't think that was common knowledge because I think he was still in office when this came out. I think.
Yeah, I know, but I'm
just at the
pretty
tail
sure
end of
that the
his-
whole
of-
astrology thing came out while he was in office.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought it was after. Okay.
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. Okay.
I could be wrong. I have been before. As anyone that has listened to episode 2 knows, I can be wrong often and continuously for over an hour.
I think you're being a little hard on yourself.
Well, somebody has to
Okay.
be.
Yeah. That or, the other thing I thought it would have been funny if they would have done like a hard ass version of Reagan where he plays like the dawdling guy, but then like Phil Hartman did him in SNL, where as soon as everybody leaves, he turns into like just some micromanaging, terrible person that knows everything about everything and is just on top of everything as sharp as a tack. But they did, which is fine. You're right. I'd forgotten about that part. That was a really good part.
Yeah, I just
story.
enjoyed it. It was something that struck me as amusing. All
Okay.
right. You got anything else about Justice League you want to bring up?
Not that I'm seeing or thinking of.
Okay.
No, I think that was about it.
Okay.
So thumbs up from you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I really did. I really enjoyed it. I truly did mean to reread it today prior to this because I was willing to. I just ran into some time crunch issues. And I am going to go ahead.
I would encourage. No,
and
go
I
ahead,
am going to
please.
go ahead and read more of the international because I want to know about Maxwell Lord. I will continue reading on my own.
That and I would from that era for
Mm-hmm.
those. I think it's the same writers. Like I said, I'm 90 something percent positive it was the same writers plotter. Those miniseries because I think they
Mm-hmm.
also did a Martian Manhunter miniseries too back
Okay.
then in the late 80s, early 90s, probably late 80s. They did one for Doctor Fate, Mr. Miracle, Martian Manhunter, and blanking on one, but somebody else. Those were good. Those were fun. So you suggested I read Stumptown.
Yes. Stumptown.
And I think I told you, if or maybe I was a little embarrassed, never heard of it. And then when you told me about the series, the TV series that was out with Kobe Smothers, is that her last name?
I was not aware there was going to be
Agent
a
Hill from
quiz.
the Avengers. Hey, I'm not gonna. There's not gonna be any math. Just know
Oh,
that.
I can handle math on the
Um,
fly. I just
oh,
pronunciation of people's names on the fly is not my thing.
well, anyways, I had never heard of the series,
Uh-huh.
and I'd seen something on the TV show because, of course, I recognized her and Jake Johansson, oh, whatever his name is, from New Girl was on that
Johnson.
show. I remember
Jake
seeing
Johnson. You're,
Johnson,
you're thinking
Jake
of Jake
Johnson.
Johansson, the stand-up comedian from the 90s.
That's right,
And it's
Jake Johnson
Kobe
from New Girl.
Smulders, Smulders.
Kobe Smulders. Okay, did I say Smothers like the Smothers
You
Brothers?
said Smothers like the Smothers Brothers. That is correct.
Okay,
Well, actually, it's incorrect, but that's what you said.
right. I gotcha. I tell you what, I ripped through this thing. I sat down thinking, I'll read a couple issues, and it wasn't. I mean, I think it was all 5 issues, but
Yeah.
it was fun. It
Mm-hmm.
was interesting. It was dark. It
Mm-hmm.
was funny. The art in it was fantastic,
Uh-huh.
setting the mood. So just off the bat, I'll just tell you, thumbs up. Speaking of going to read more, even though we're going to read other stuff for future podcasts, and then maybe we'll come back to this at some point. I know there's more volumes of this,
Mm-hmm.
just like there's a few more volumes of Black Hammer. I'm going to make the time to read that, at some point because it was cool. And I'm sorry to go back to Justice League real fast. Did you like the art in Justice League,
I
Kevin
did.
Maguire?
I
The
did.
facial expressions and all
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay, that was another thing for me that would really back then too. I was really into the art, and that just helped sell it even more for me. But anyways, the art in Stumptown,
Mm-hmm. Is incredible.
awesome.
I
Yeah,
mean, it is just everything about the art in Stumptown is just incredible. I again, this is one of my favorite comics that I just happened to see in the library when I was perusing the at the time children's section where they had comic books. They have I always laughed when I started doing this in particular when I moved back to Dallas because I would go to the public library and I would look at some of these comic books and they're right by like kids comics in the graphic novel section of they call it young adults or teens and young adults, and I'm like, I can't imagine what the more conservative mothers would think if one of their kids came home and she saw what was in some of these comic books.
yeah. I mean, Stumptown being in the kids section or even teen section of a public library, somebody didn't know
They
what they were doing.
Well, they just don't have it. They didn't have anywhere else to. Then they all of a sudden, I think it was about 2 years ago, I'm thumbing through the graphic novel section. I'm like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden there was a sign up that says more adult. That certain graphic novels have been moved to somewhere, and I had to go hunt through the library. They got them back in a different area, and I'm like, okay, it's probably smart. It's amusing because they're on a higher shelf.
Well,
You
and
must
that's
be
probably
this tall
because
to read.
well, and I bet you that happened because somebody's mom or dad
Uh,
or guardian did see what they were reading. Like, wait a second, they looked over their shoulder and saw something, and like, give me that.
Yeah. Some 12-year-old came home with something. What is the one I've just been rereading? Powers
Huh.
by Bendis. and was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? No, you cannot read this. Or Lord for God, if they got hold of Preacher or The Boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of that, even back in the 80s, I remember knowing, because right when the transition was happening between being able to get comic books at the grocery store or the bookstore like B. Dalton or Walden Books, or the grocery store like Albertsons or H-E-B back in San Antonio, the comic book shops started coming up. And my mom and father, my mom and father were really cool about taking me every so often. And making a long story long, one of the times I was there, just happenstance, The Killing Joke was just released by Alan Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's a cool looking cover with the Joker with the camera. And I had my allowance saved up, and I think I spent pretty much my whole allowance on that one comic book. And then I got home and reading it. I remember kind of looking around thinking, I don't think I'm supposed to be reading this. But this is good. But this is freaking me out, because it's pretty dark and heavy for a kiddo in middle school. Yeah, I had to have been. That came out of me. Yeah. I don't think sometimes everybody gets what's going on there in the old comic books that aren't maybe necessarily for the youngins.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so Stumptown, to circle back, is truly detective noir.
Oh, yeah.
It is outstanding. It literally, the first issue opens with her being pulled out of the trunk of a car and then shot on the edge of a river.
Right. And then the perfect, and just using kind of a, I don't know if it's a trope. Tell me if I'm trying to use fancy words. Just using the whole detective thing, like, and then 24 hours earlier, or 1 week earlier, or whatever it was.
Yeah. 27 hours
12
earlier.
hours earlier.
There she is at a Indian casino.
Yeah, gambling and losing her shirt.
Uh-huh.
So this is about a private detective in Portland, Oregon, which is the nickname for Portland, Oregon, Stumptown, and I just didn't know that.
Yes. And you know, when I learned that they called it Stumptown, I learned that when I picked up the graphic novel originally.
Okay. And I never.
It may be common knowledge, but it was not common knowledge that I had.
It was not common knowledge that I had either. I mentioned his name before, Andy Shattuck, one of my college roommates.
Uh-huh.
Him and his wife and kiddo live in right outside of Portland, Oregon now.
Oh. Okay.
So there's that. But so Stumptown private detective named Dexedrine.
Yeah,
Is that how you say her name?
Dex Perios.
Yes.
Dexedrine Perios.
And she's a private investigator that is not very good at gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And gets into the casino for over 15 grand. And apparently the person that runs the casino, Sue Lynn, her granddaughter's gone missing, and says, hey, guess what? Find my granddaughter, I'll forgive you your debt to the casino. And boom, we're off and running. And author, Greg Rucka, artist, Matthew Southworth, maybe? Southworth? Yeah. Yeah, it was just really well-paced and all sorts of cool, fun, different, bad, and good characters.
Yes. And every character was very real. There wasn't any of this, oh, well, I'm going to have this one person in here and it's just going to be two-dimensional. Nope. All of them seemed to have just in the limited interaction with every one of them, they had personality.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. I mean,
no,
they've written how many episodes of Batman and Justice League and he still doesn't have a personality?
Dang. Low blow. Just out of left field. Just throwing haymakers. Yeah, because this is only, how many issues was this? 4 or 5?
Yeah, I think the first one was like 5 or 6 issues.
But God, you got to know a lot. She's, by the way, something that was she's got her younger brother living with her, Ansel, who I think from the way he's portrayed and both visually and the way he verbalizes as maybe has Down syndrome. Is that what you picked up?
Yeah, definitely special. He's special. He has special needs. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I have a relative of mine that is special needs, and it was nice to see a kiddo, with special needs like that portrayed and done, not for any kind of laughs or anything, just part of her life.
Yeah.
It was cool.
I felt they did a good job of that in the television show as well.
Oh, really? Okay. I was gonna ask you some questions about what made it over to the TV show and what didn't.
Hmm.
Then the two bad guys we meet first, I guess, in that first issue are Dill and Whale,
Yeah, I think that was
correct?
their names, Dill and Whale.
And they're just not good people, and they're heavies for we find out the son of the I guess a mobster
Yeah, the
kind of
son of a
guy
mobster.
that's
Yeah, the head of
the
MS-13.
right Mar, Marenko. Mr. Marenko is the head mobster, and Oscar's his son. That's
Hmm.
Mr. Marenko doesn't want to be involved in the family business, and Oscar's always trying to get into the family business. And
Hmm.
his sister Isabel wants in the family business, but she's a woman, so
Hmm.
she can't be in the family business because of I think they established they're from Latin America, or he
Yeah.
was Marenko, and you know she's a woman, so
Hmm.
no can do you can't be an organized crime person in that family because chauvinism
Yes.
uh, and sexism.
I
Because you know,
I truly like the homage to old school detective noir that they went through in this, with the starting out with the flashback, or I guess the
yeah,
flash forward, start in the middle kind of thing, because that's where they kind of did. They
yeah,
started in the middle,
yeah,
and then they go back to show where she gets to there. And in that time where she's doing that, she gets the job after she's shot in the river. She then gets called into Mr. Marenko's house, where he explains
right.
to her that he knows
To the
she's looking for the girl and she should come to him, and that he'll pay her that much money if he comes to her first. And she does the
oh yeah,
detective thing of not committing to it, just, oh, okay, I'm going to go. But then everybody else thinks she's working for him now.
right,
Well, you showed up there. You worked for him. Everybody works for him, especially his daughter. You work for my dad. That's what's going on. You're gonna bring the girl to my dad, and you start getting the inkling that, oh wait, what's going on with the two of them, the daughter and the
right.
missing girl.
Yeah, Isabel's the daughter of the crime boss Marenko, and Charlotte Sue Lin, the casino owner, runner of runs the casino. That's the granddaughter that Dex is looking for.
Hmm.
Oh, and then the trope. Yeah, you're right about the trope. Sorry, yeah, I did read the forward by Matt Faction,
Hmm.
I think. Because they talk about Rockford Files in there,
Oh yeah,
and I love the Rockford Files back when I was a kiddo. I guess mostly in reruns. I don't know if I saw a lot of it when it first came out,
yeah,
but good person at heart. Maybe not the best at certain parts of their life, and that has a crappy car that's not exactly in tip-top condition, but still wants it to be nice, so much so that when the bad guys at the beginning are just ripping into her soft top on
yeah.
her Mustang, she's like, oh, come on,
Oh come on,
really?
man.
Come on, man. Not the car. I also did that when he's brought to the Bob Boss's house, I thought of the Big Lebowski when he's
Oh,
looking for the girl.
okay,
I did.
all right.
When he goes to the house on the beach
Uh huh.
and the guy drugs him and everything. I did think of that. And so yeah, Rockford Files I mentioned,
Uh huh.
but I did think of Big Lebowski too, because she's a little rough
Yes.
uh, around the edges,
She,
but
she
heart of gold kind of.
she's a wee bit rough around the edges with a heart of gold.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it was fun. I am interested to know more. They do put out a lot of stuff. She's got her friend at the precinct that
Hmm.
she can call on, that they talk crap to each other, but they're friends. She's got some history with the captain at the precinct that you get a pretty good inkling that they had a thing
Yes.
that didn't end well,
Yes.
and that was
Seems like it started
tense and
pretty good
fun.
though.
Yeah, except maybe he was married.
Well, I particularly enjoyed the scene, and I'm flipping through the pages on my iPad again, when she comes out of the water, because needless to say, she doesn't die when she's shot. There's a scene in the flashback where she mentions going to get her vest. Where's my vest? She
Right.
asks her brother Ansel. Clearly a bulletproof vest. She comes out of the water to the cops, holding her at gunpoint.
Yeah, and they're arresting her. She's like, "What are you doing? I just got shot." Oh, and this, just for context, this came out. I did look it up. It came out in late 2009.
Mhm.
Is when the first series launched. So not terribly old, not Justice League old, but it's not exactly from the last few years, like some things are, but it still holds up. It's still very well done. I can't say. I don't know, and this is me. I guess I don't know enough about Greg Rucka. I'm pretty sure I've read other stuff by him, but nothing's really popped to mind,
You
and I really
have.
didn't do a whole bunch of research on it.
You have read other stuff from him, and we can.
Okay.
We'll go over it at some point if I'm remembering.
Okay.
Oh dang it! Now I gotta check. Hold on a second before I name drop something. Let me pull some stuff up. Oh yeah, I was right. He did The Old Guard.
See. Nope. I don't know from the Old Guard.
You
What
do
is
know
that?
The Old Guard. It's the Netflix TV, the movie they made. It's from that. You haven't read The Old Guard? You should read The Old Guard. I only
Okay.
read it because the movie came out, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I read it. No, he's just written a lot of comics, and he's really good.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know that
got
Netflix has an Old Guard series.
You haven't seen
There's a show called The Old Guard.
you haven't seen no. There's a
Sure.
movie called The Old Guard. You haven't seen that yet? Okay.
Nope. Uh-uh.
Oh, it's a movie
Not e-
based on a comic book called
Okay.
The Old Guard that I can give you a bit of a synopsis on it right now if you'd like.
Please.
Immortal Warriors. Synopsis over.
Okay. Done.
They find out when they're killed that they come back to life, and then they kind of
Interesting.
band together, and it's in the modern age, and they get a new member of their group. And they've lost members
Okay.
because eventually it just kind of gives out. You don't know when your last death is going to come, but it eventually happens.
Hey, I'm sorry to go back to Stumptown, and then at the very end of this, what I read on Hoopla, which let me say this, and I don't think that I've done this on the podcast, and I don't think I have. You were on me forever and ever. Get a public library card. It's all online. Get a public library. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, okay. I can get floppies, all right. And then I finally did it, and Charles, you're right. I was dumb. You're good looking. I'm not. You're funny. I'm not as funny sometimes. You're absolutely right about the public library card. If I hope every town has, I'm sure every big town does, an incredible resource, completely free. So much stuff on there. Of course, I'm using it for comic books right now. They have music. They have, of course, novels. They have nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible resource that I'm afraid a lot of people like me either don't know about, dismiss, and don't take advantage of. Can't say enough about it. Thank you so much for staying on me about it.
You're welcome. You also need to download Overdrive because they also have the digital library from Hoopla is a little different. Hoopla is like a service, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have just the public library has digital comics. The difference between the two is the ones that the Dallas Public Library lends out, they'll have limited copies. So if there's one copy and I have it checked out, you can't check it out. But that's not how Hoopla works. Hoopla allows, if they have Stumptown Volume One, anybody that has access to Hoopla can check that out. But they can only check out,
No
I
matter how many
believe,
people.
12 different things a month.
That's fair.
Oh, it's
mean,
absolutely
come
fair. I listen to books on tape in the car most of the time when I'm driving. So I get most of the books on tape I get from Hoopla because I can just find something and download it. Don't have to worry about, oh, well, I got to wait until it's my turn. And then, well, what if I'm in the middle of another 24-hour book on tape when it comes in?
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
so I'm glad we're plugging the public library again. I love the public library.
And I do too now. And you know what? As a youngster,
Mm-hmm.
during the summers, whatever, kindergarten through middle school, for sure, even into high school,
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things during the summer because we'd have summer reading lists, and I was very much there were limits as to how this is, of course, back when there wasn't digital.
Mm-hmm.
There were limits on how many books you could check out. I was always max it out. I was always be over ambitious
Mm-hmm.
because I'd always want to have whatever I was into, at the time. And whether, I got into Lion of the Witch and the Wardrobe series or Wrinkle in Time series, and I'd want to take them all out at the same time, and I'd max out, or Sherlock Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
But even back then, it was a great resource, and it just still is. And just, I think people forget, especially if you're like me that did love it back then when you were a kid, and it was just a great place to go and wander around and find cool stuff, whether, fiction, nonfiction, like I said. It's just great. Well, hey, real fast, also, I'm sorry to go back to Stumptown. Well, no, I'm not sorry to go back to Stumptown. One thing I didn't mention in the volume I read, that end little short story, Mustang Ranch, about her car's broken,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and it was just a great little short,
Uh-huh.
thing.
It really was.
Where this guy's an asshole, and her mechanic. Yeah, I'll be honest. When her mechanic says maybe we can work something out, I got, oh god, this is going to get creepy. Well, no, he's got a job for her because he needs to collect on this guy,
Yeah.
and she gets it done because this guy's just a creep.
Uh-huh.
That's a deadbeat dad, and owes just essentially stole this car from her mechanic, gets it back, and then she gets her fixed car. But it was just a great little end to the whole thing.
I love the bit in the movie theater when he's on a date with a woman and he's eating his popcorn and she sneaks up behind her and yanks the woman's shirt down so she thinks the guy with her does it.
Yeah. Yeah, or when he's on the date and comes up and says the blood results are back.
Uh-huh.
Have you been intimate with him? Well, I'm gonna need all your sexual partners too, to inform them. And then at the very end of that, you have a yellow page ad for Stumptown Investigations.
Uh-huh.
And did you take a look at that at all?
I don't remember if I really paid that much attention to it.
I didn't get. There's a bunch of stuff on here, but for example, it's a private investigator section for Stumptown or for Portland, I guess. But there's Archie Goodwin Investigations, which Archie Goodwin was a longtime editor and writer at Marvel and Epic Comics back in the day, and they just dropped. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of it.
Oh,
the
look
Rockford
at this.
Agency is listed there.
Slam Bradley.
There's Slam. I was going to say Slam Bradley's there, and then over here you got V.I. Warsharsky. Was that the Kathleen Turner vehicle where she played a PI back in the 80s?
Oh, Elvis Cole Detective Agency.
What is that? That looked familiar, but I didn't get it.
Oh man, Robert Cray.
What is
it is
Elvis
one
Cole?
of my absolute favorite detective series. Elvis Cole is amazing.
Really?
If they ever do a comic book of him, I'll tell you to read it.
Okay. Well,
I know you don't
read
read
books
prose
too. I can. It's just there's a lot.
I
of
didn't say
comic
you
books
can't read. I said I know you don't read.
I don't know how to read.
The one right under it, Elvis Cole, is Gently, D.
Oh, Dirk Gently?
Uh-huh.
No. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, Dirk Gently.
What else we got here? Oh,
that's outstanding.
I'm sorry.
That's just brilliant.
Remington Steele Investigations, which I used to watch a fair amount of Remington Steele back in the day.
All right.
My mom liked it too, and my dad.
The bottom left, Jay Shaft.
Oh, Shaft.
Uh-huh.
Duh. Boom. Oh, well, hey, how about H. Poirot from the Agatha Christie books?
This is
so I
P.
just
Marlowe.
Yeah.
Mars Investigations. Oh, this is just brilliant. Okay, we should stop just reading this. I'm sure.
I know we're just
This is
we're
not.
just reading names there, but
I'm going to read this later, but and I am going to
just
screenshot it, and I will send this out for any of y'all on our Twitter page I mentioned earlier.
Which was what again? J&C Talk Comics?
Yes. J&C Talk Comics.
And is written down. So
yes, sir.
JANDC Talk Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, man, are we about to put a bow on this thing and call it?
Well, I guess we didn't really.
Did
we finish talking about Stumptown? We didn't really get to the end of it. But I mean, it all works out, and it works out in.
No.
It works out in the kind of in the ways a lot of these detective stories do at times. It followed along with a hard-boiled detective thing. She brings all the people together eventually, and then she kind of blackmails the bad guy.
Right, but she gives him an out if he would have played fair.
Oh yeah.
But then she has a backup plan for when he doesn't, when they meet on the beach.
Yeah.
Because Marenko goes back on his word. Mm-hmm. And she had a contingency for that. And then, ultimately, you're right. She does save Charlotte, the granddaughter of the casino owner. But Oscar, well, Mr. Marenko, the mob boss, is going to let her walk with Charlotte. And Oscar, the son, wants to try to prove himself to Daddy and pulls a gun on her. And it's looking bad for Dex. Of course, this is... They probably didn't want to end the series after one arc. But Marenko shoots his son on the beach.
Yeah.
And I thought killed him. But
I did too.
Later, I think.
I think they wanted you to feel that way, and then they come back on the, hey, Marinko's son ended up in the hospital the other night with a gunshot wound.
Right.
So
exactly.
That was I like that because yeah, he wasn't going to shoot him to kill him, but it was going to be the only way to stop him from shooting her.
Yeah.
So
because he wants daddy to love him.
Yeah. No,
how do you do that?
This really was up my alley when I read it because I mean it slams up two things I really love, which is comic books and detective books, and I like the whole noir thing. It's why some of my favorite comic books go that way. Because I mean I even mentioned Powers, which is Bendis's noir, and I'm gonna have you read whatever happened. The first arc from that eventually. Whatever happened to. Oh man, that ticks me off. I'm blanking on the name of it, and it's unimportant for this conversation. But I love the way this comic worked. I mean, just with the art and the characters and the hard-boiled detective, and the fact that the hard-boiled detective is a woman makes it better because women can be just as big a hot mess as men can.
Absolutely, and here's the thing. I'll tell you what. If there are more good crime detective noir comic books like this one, I'd be in pretty much every time. It's just I know I've read some that are like or I've tried to read like some Sherlock Holmes comic books, and quite frankly, I've read at least a couple times the complete works. I feel like of the original stuff, and I like that stuff. So the comic book sometime adaptations or people trying to do different stuff, I'm like it's all right. But
I think it's much better. I have read a number of graphic novels, comic book adaptations of books I've read that I like, and I'll still like the comic book adaptation, but I much prefer a whole new thing for a comic book instead of rehashing something old just in comic book form. So I think that's what's the greatness about this is a whole character that was developed that he wrote for a comic book. It wasn't a novel that he's like, let's make it a graphic novel as well, kind of thing. So it just works better.
But at the same time, very much tipping the hat in a lot of different ways to a lot of different detective stories, whether they be TV or novels or what have you, but just done great.
Clearly a fan of the detective genre and just a brilliant job.
Exactly. Just done very, very well. Hey, real fast, we didn't talk about Gray, the character Gray, I think his name is. Well, and before we go, and we can talk as much as you want about Stumptown, you saw the show? I haven't seen episode 1.
Yeah, I saw all the episodes of the show. Yeah, we can touch on the show a little bit because I really enjoyed it.
What translated over from the comic book to the show? What didn't? Is Gray Jake Johnson's character? Or
Gray is Jake Johnson's character, and it's a little. And it's been a while since I've read. I'm sitting on the other volumes at my house. I haven't gotten to reading them yet because I actually got the hardcovers. That's not on Hoopla. I got the actual paper copies from the library, and have not cracked them open yet. But he is definitely immediately more of a main character in the TV show, and he's a bar owner. I never really did quite get what. He clearly works with Ansel in this first issue. In the first issue, he clearly works with Ansel. I don't know what he does. He's a bar owner in the television show, so I kind of wonder if they didn't smash up the Gray character with the bartender that clearly knows her into one. So he's fleshed more out. The captain of the precinct is a woman. The detective that she gets to know is a man.
Okay, so they flipped that.
So they kind of changed some stuff around. Really, really enjoyed the show, quite a bit. Matter of fact, it's kind of on my list to rewatch because I think it's on Hulu. But I didn't want to do this because I wanted to reread it and talk about it, and I didn't want to get in my head all the stuff mixed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna rewatch it. It unfortunately, I was very excited at the end of the season last year. It got renewed, and then COVID hit, and because COVID was going on, they decided to cancel the renewal, and they are not going to do another season.
Yeah, and that sucks. I read that too. I did read that's got to be just a gut punch for all the people working on that show, which I know those shows employ lots of people besides obviously the actors that we see, and that sucks. And especially because I think you liked it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The show, the
I
TV
did.
show, and
Quite a bit.
I'm going to check it out now because I enjoyed this so much. I'm definitely going to check it out. Does the first season have any similarities with anything you read, or does
Yes.
it borrow from anything from
Yes.
this arc? Okay,
Yes.
okay,
A matter of fact,
and
it borrows directly. They lean into the beginning. It starts with this mystery, basically.
awesome. Okay,
Matter of fact, this whole thing with the car and the dill and whale are in it. It's quite entertaining. I was very excited when it came out because like I said, I had read the comics just on a whim, and then I saw a trailer for that, and I'm like, hold on a minute, is that the same thing? And I did a quick Google search, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is Stumptown. That's that same thing. That's going to be awesome, and it was.
and in the comic book, I got the distinct impression that Gray has a thing for Dex.
Yes.
Did you get that? Is that in the show too, where maybe it's unrequited a little bit?
There's stuff
Because I
going
feel
on.
like that
Yeah,
was
there's definitely
okay.
a thing between the two of them.
Okay.
No.
Well, cool.
Yeah,
Well,
worth
and
watching.
I like both those actors.
Oh
I
yeah.
like Kobe Smulders and I like Jake Johnson.
Yeah.
So cool,
Everyone
and
in
too
that
bad
show is outstanding. It is really legitimately a shame that they canceled the show. For my sake, if nothing else. For purely selfish
hey,
reasons, I would have liked to see a season 2.
It came out in January 2019. I think I had heard of it. I don't know that I knew it was based on a comic book. And not just because it's based on a comic book, that would make me a little bit more interested to check it out. I never even watched an episode while it aired, and now it's canceled before I even really knew it was a thing. So bad on me. Of course, I did the same thing with Firefly. Firefly was canceled before I even knew it existed.
Oh man. Well,
So
I never watched
there's that.
Firefly because they were billing it as the guy that did Buffy, and I never watched Buffy, so I was like, that was that girl thing? I'm not going to watch that. They should have billed it as Star Wars. Or
Yeah.
Space Western. And I'd have been all over that.
I was going to say, yeah. No, I know. Sometimes they don't promote stuff very well. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
But hey, good suggestion. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So next time when we do this, what are we reading?
So I have suggested that you read Mutant Massacre again. I'm gonna get. This is the last time I'm doing 80s for my suggestion, but again, right in my 80s, late 80 wheelhouse. Mutant Massacre was a multi-issue crossover with 3 or 4 different titles of Marvel involved. You had Uncanny X-Men, New Mutants, Thor, Power Pack, Daredevil, and the title of the event kind of is self-descriptive. Some mutants get massacred.
Yes, it is.
I tell you what, the other thing I found interesting going back and reading about this stuff, way after I read it originally and many years ago from the current time, one of the first, if not the first Marvel big crossover event, believe it or not. They had done Secret Wars before that, but that was its own isolated miniseries. This was the first time, my understanding, I believe, they did a big story arc, multiple writers, multiple comic books, and guess what? It did well, and now we have one every other month. But, or at least once a year to twice a year in both Marvel and DC. But back then it was new and different, and I remember liking it, and I'm again curious to see what it's like now. But that's what I suggested to you, and you suggested to me to read Hawkeye.
That is correct. From
From
was it
fairly
2012?
Recent.
What's that?
Yeah, I want to say comparatively fairly recent.
Oh yeah, very very recent. It's definitely in my in when I got back into reading comic books run of mid 2000s and up. But
Right.
it's a fun arc, and I'm only having you read the first. I think it's the first 5 comics. I suggest you read more because it gets good, and we can delve into that after that. But I don't want to overdo you. I did read all 22 episodes of the. Oh, for the love of God!
Yeah, I'm gonna start keeping a count. That's at least 3 or 4. Where you said episode instead of count, and you said episode instead of issue, and it's okay because now it's now it's down and now it's downright endearing.
So I read all 22 issues of it, and I enjoyed it as much the second time through as I did the first time. But that is another one that I pointed out to you. It's on Hoopla.
Yeah.
So you can just get volume 1 of that and read it. And it also has a Young Avengers one. Read that, because I went ahead and read that too. Because it...
well, I think it's included in there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's included in that. That's what I'm saying.
Or no?
Well, it's not included. I didn't read that when I read it. Oh, I may have actually read that when I got it at the library the first time. But on the Marvel Unlimited, I just ran through the first 22 issues of that. But it gets a little bit into Kate Bishop more.
Oh, okay.
Or at least lets you learn a little bit about her. I mean, she's in these comics, and it's great because she's awesome. She's the real Hawkeye.
Ooh, okay. No, that's well. And you know what I found out, and this is probably for us to talk when we're not doing the podcast. I tried to. I looked and saw that Mutant Massacre was, of course, on Marvel Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, it was just taking forever to do anything. I've got a pretty old iPad, but so that probably needs to be updated. So that might have something to do with it.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we didn't do. I know I'd play that little thing on the piano when we started, but we didn't do like a. Yeah,
no, but I do an opener before. I do that, record it, and then put it on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I've done on the first two. I thought
you used something from when we were on. No.
Well, no, that's what I do at the very beginning before I do that. Because I cut out something from what we just talked about, and I put that at the front. And then I have an opener where I've been singing your name the last 2 times.
Yeah, you did do that the last 2 times.
Yeah, and I'm well, y'all know by now that I did it again with something different, because I'm trying to come up with something. And yeah, you're gonna record that little riff of yours, and I'm gonna stick it in here somewhere.
Okay. I will do that.
If you get it to me, I'll put it in. I kind of think I know where I'm going to put it. So, and everybody that's listened to this far will know where it was, provided I do it. And if I don't do it, I'll be cutting this little speech you and I are having out anyway.
Cool. Well, man, I've enjoyed our 3rd podcast.
Yes, I have too, as well. I think it went fairly well.
And to all of y'all listening, all 2 or 3 of you, thank you. I'm hoping it's more.
Thank you very much. We also have a thing that you can send us electronic mail on. It's Hav and Charles Talk Comics at gmail.com. So if you want to send us email and you don't have our personal email address or our telephone numbers, which at this point anyone listening probably does, you can reach us at Hav and Charles Talk Comics at gmail.com. And that's all written out, Hav and Charles Talk Comics at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Yeah, at gmail.com. And on the Twitter thing, I think we're both individually following the Twitter feed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm Hav Gonzo tweets, I think.
Yes.
And you're hearing the real deal? What are you? What's your Twitter handle?
I'm the real deal with Bill McNeil.
This cane displeases me.
I'm Herring Red Real.
That's right. Thank you. The color red, not red like a red book. Okay.
Yes. Oh man, now I'm going to change it to Herring Red.
Well, don't do that.
I'm not going to do that. I just really wish I'd have known that. Now that I'm all right. Well done. Yes, red the color.
All right,
RED. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Hav. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm sure I'll be talking to you in all of 5 seconds. Everyone that's listening, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.